Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program with Coach Menachem Bernfeld on this beautiful summer night, June 30th. As all the kids have off from school, people are starting day camps tomorrow and camp and who knows what. It's busy, Baruch Hashem, and thank you for joining. Let's jump right into it. Tonight is share 192. We actually had an extra share this week with Rabbi Dr. Jacob Friedman, so we're up to 192. So of course, I want to start off with thanking all the WhatsApp people that posted and they email people about the share and let people know about it. We really appreciate it, and it's very important. Like I said, not every share might be for everybody. Tonight's share might not be for you. If you don't like to laugh, definitely should not be here tonight. But if it's not for you, post it, let people know about it. You don't know what you could do, can help somebody. You don't know what people are going through. And it's a place of sichos, a very place to talk out things, concepts, ideas, therapy, chizuk, Torah. It's a place to get together and really speak through. Again, if anybody wants to join our WhatsApp chats, please WhatsApp me at 732-314-1710. I will send you the community chat link. That's where we post everything. I'll also post it soon in the Zoom chat as well. And you can go to menachembernfeld.com. You could sign up to his emails. He sends out the speakers, the replays, and everything that's going on in Coach Menachem land. So please join us over there. And for all the people that are watching us on YouTube, please click on the subscribe button and the like button, so me and Menachem could retire in Hawaii soon with all the millions of subscribers, and we could be rich like Yehudah. And join us. And thank you to all the advertising sponsors, Liquid Scoop, Elian Ariel from 5 Town Central, and Chaya Kaufman from JCN for promoting us on all the digital platforms. Menachem, next Sunday, not confirmed, but it looks like it will be like that. July 7th, we're going to have a world-famous book author who's been on our share before, Rabbi Heshi Kleiman from the Praying with Fire series. He's working on a book. I don't know if it came out yet. It's coming out. Basically, the topic is on Hashgacha Pratis. We really want to, we always talk about Hashgacha Pratis. It's always like one of those things when we see it, it's like, whoa, we get very excited for 30 seconds, and it's like, whoa, you feel God. But then, we just sort of forget about it. So we're really going to try to really get into it and really understand it and realize it and remember it and how to be really inspired by it. So hopefully, please join us next Sunday, July 7th. It should be a very deep and meaningful program. Tonight shares 192, and we don't have a gematria tonight because our night is not here. But Menachem will make up 2 gematrias next week. We're going to start off first tonight with Coach Menachem Bernfeld, for real, not for a joke. He's going to open up. He's going to let us know, what are we doing here tonight? A lot of people came over to me about the flyer. I got texts. Wow, this looks like Coach Menachem is going to the left. Like, what's going on over here? So Coach Menachem, explain to everybody, what's tonight's share? Tonight is a comedy skit. It's a play. What are we doing here tonight?
Well, yeah, we'll find out. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to another Let's Get Real with Coach Menachem, and Baruch Hashem, we're doing 192 tonight. And yes, we did have one last week on Thursday for the situation over here in Lakewoods, and Baruch Hashem, it was a lot of physics. People needed a place to go to just talk, to listen, to how to process of what happened. And here we are tonight, and I believe tonight we're going to be laughing a little bit. It's going to be a little bit funny, and I believe that's the goal, and that's the title. But it's a good question. When somebody goes through a very hard situation, whether it's personal or community, talk about global, talk about war, is it the right thing? Is it the right thing to joke and laugh? And it looks like you're pushing everything away, not taking life seriously. So I think that's a good question to start with. And tonight we're going to hear more. But just thinking about it, many times people go through things not easy. It could be heavy, and everybody in their personal story. Many times the only way to go on, to continue, to get up in the morning, to put one foot in front of the other foot, to be able to continue no matter what's going on, is by, trying to make light a little bit, if possible. So there is an idea there that it could help for a person to continue, even though it's so hard, to laugh. There is a concept of laughing therapy, which we're probably not going to talk about tonight, but it has something, some shaykhs, some connection. But I think tonight is going to be really deeper. And hopefully we're going to understand it. The idea that people have certain things that it could be many years that they haven't discussed, something that it could be 10, 20, 30 years, and they can't talk about it, or something that happened now, but they just can't discuss it. And this, in a way, and Yehudah, you'll help us out tonight, could help a person to be able to talk about it, which I believe many times is the beginning of the journey, the beginning of to be able to heal, beginning of being able to see what happened, how did I take it, and what needs to be done so I can continue. And it's a deep concept, and if it's done the right way, which I believe Yehudah does this every day in his office with a lot of clients, whether it's one-on-one or groups. So I'm very excited to hear more about it. And Amit Hashem, if this can help you in your situation and anybody in Bechlal, in Klal Yisrael situation, we're going through a time that we need to have a little bit of, but we have to laugh a little bit because there's so much going on. And in order to continue, whether it's relationship, your kids, and to be able to continue life, we have to find some ideas. So in Mitzvah Hashem, we should have a lot of siyata d'shmaya, and we should be able to take steps, a few ideas from tonight's program.
Coach Menachem, beautiful opening. Okay, let's jump into it. Yehudah, you ready? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Tonight's year is titled Healing Through Humor. Therapy meets laughter. Improv healing. Can comedy mixed with therapy heal deep wounds and trauma? So I'm going to read Yehudah. Yehudah, how do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
Oh, I was going to mention this. All right. It's Alcabes.
Alcabes.
Yeah. Well, we heard you set us up last week, and my son has been calling himself Abacassis all week.
Abacassis, right.
So
the dyslexia is working well. So Alcassis. Well, it sounds like an Italian mafia name. Let's get into it. I'm going to read your bio, and let's really jump into it because we really want to see if this is something real or this is just like a guy who just drank too much. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line tonight. Yehudah Alcabes is a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW, so he actually has a license. This is a real guy. He deals in addiction, specialist educator, a passionate advocate for creativity and the importance in education and mental health. Yehudah is extensively trained in the art of improv theater and performs regularly. He teaches improv comedy in a group therapy as an adjustment treatment for addictions, anxiety, and trauma. He maintains a private practice in Boca Raton and is the host of the Improv Therapy podcast, which he blends the world of therapy and comedy together. And Yehudah, floor is yours. Open it up.
all right. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm really excited to get into all this. I am disappointed that we didn't have a gematria tonight because I wanted to do the obligatory response whenever you hear a gematria. Do you guys know what it is? The only reaction you're allowed to have when you hear a gematria goes like this. There's nothing else you can do when you hear a gematria. I was waiting for that gematria, and it's I could say psh, psh. All right, yes. So I'm Yehudah Alcabes. Some people call me Yehudah Abacassis, and I got a lot to talk about here. So I'm gonna try to do a nice little intro, but then we're gonna get into it because there's a lot of different pieces. This is actually a very complicated topic. Ironically, the setup, you guys are like, oh, we're going to have so much fun tonight and this and that. I have a very boring side of myself, which is the therapist side of me. And then there's the fun side. And I don't know, we have to see kind of like which side gets more of a presence here. But the boring side is reading research about laughter, and research about laughter. If you ever want to suck the fun out of something, read the research, because it's just terrible. It's terribly painfully boring. But it is very interesting. And so when we talk about laughter, if you really think about it, there's so many different types of laughter, right? There's nervous laughter, there's defensive laughter, there's levels of the intensity of laughter. What I want to focus on is one area of laughter which relates to improv comedy. It's a very interesting theory about why we laugh, and I'm going to come back to that very soon. So what is improv comedy? I'd like to start there. A lot of people think improv comedy is stand-up comedy. It's not stand-up comedy. You can do stand-up comedy. But what improv comedy is you and usually one other person, but it could be more or less, go onto a stage in front of an audience, ask for a suggestion, and make something up on the spot. And it is an art form, which in America has been, used for 70, 80 years, maybe more than that, a little more than that. throughout history, it's actually been used all over history in all different places in all different ways. But in America specifically, there was a Jewish social worker, surprise, surprise, a Jewish lady in Chicago who worked with immigrant kids who came through Ellis Island and didn't know the language, didn't know the country, and lost connection with their parents. Her name was Viola Spolin. I think her name was like Spolinovich or something like that originally. It was something, she changed it. And she worked at a place where they had immigrant children that were there who didn't even speak the same language as each other. And she used to do these improvised theater games with them as a way of bringing them to connect to each other, because there was actually a lot of rivalry and a lot of tension between the kids. She had so much success in doing it with the kids that they actually used to go around to the train stations in Chicago and perform just to get the kids out there and just having, giving them a good time. From there, a form of theater developed, which was so contrary to everything that was happening at the time, theater-wise, because everything in plays and Broadway and whatever were always about royalty and fantasy and princesses and kings and things like that. And then you have these guys who get up on a stage with 2 chairs. And so it became an art form which you can study and many people study. And so I took a class for myself a few years ago. I was just interested, and I've always liked it, and I've always kind of done some of it, but never in a formal way. And when I went into the class, I immediately felt connected to the people that were in the room, even though A, I had never met them before, and B, it was such a beautiful mix of misfit children, myself included, that all got along with each other in such a short amount of time. It was a very powerful experience. Now, I did that once, and then I went back to kind of test it again. I went back, and I keep going back. Earlier today, I was practicing with a bunch of them. So personally for me, I felt a certain sense of comfort and a certain sense of, I think as Menachem referred to it a few weeks ago, a place where you could take your jacket off. I don't really wear a jacket, but whatever, my jacket was off. And so I started studying it, and in studying it, I started to find that there is a wonderful world of doing stuff that therapists talk about, and that world is improv comedy. So therapists, we like to talk about active listening, and we like to talk about presence of mind, right? And we like to talk about intimacy and all these kind of things. In the improv theater world, they don't talk about it. They have an activity and they say, go do it. And then when you go do it and you experience that feeling of like, wow, we just kind of worked together and that worked and it was really satisfying, then you have a frame of reference for the future that was a better option than other things that I've done in the past. And also you feel great. And so I started experimenting with it lightly in an anxiety group that I ran, then an addiction group. And I kept studying, and now to the point where it's something that I do on a regular basis, and I use it as an adjunct to regular treatment, because it's not a primary treatment, because you still need all the stabilization and all of the, if it's with addiction, you still need to develop some sobriety planning and some regulation tactics and all that. But as an adjunct, it sped things up, and I found it to be fascinating. So back to that theory about laughter. In improv, there was there was a lot of reverse engineering, which is really interesting. Basically, people started improvising, and then they were like, that was so cool. How did we do that? So they spent a lot of time trying to figure out what they actually did that worked. And now in hindsight, you can see how it was a really deep thing that they were doing. 2 people coming together and being able to make up a story together without any direction other than maybe one word from the audience. And there was one of the later improv teachers, gurus, who was he was a serious head case. But he used to kick people out of his class if he felt they were trying to make jokes. So you'd be trying to be funny by doing improv comedy, but if he sensed that somebody was trying to make a joke, he would kick them out of the class. And the reason why he would kick them out of the class was because he felt that the reason why audiences laugh at improvised comedy is not because of a great joke with a setup and a punchline. They actually laugh because they see 2 human beings struggling and then connecting to solve the problem. And the laughing is actually coming out of satisfaction more than the actual humor of the situation. And that is such a deep concept. When we think about laughter, we think about somebody who's making us like, making great jokes. But there are so many times that we laugh and it's not actually funny, right? Like if you were at a Shabbos table and, you guys were just in a good space and everyone's talking and they're hanging out and then somebody says something that is, makes everybody at the table erupt. From the outside, it probably is not that funny and it probably is not something you could repeat over. Like, and then he said this. Many times, once you get into a certain space, there's connection that happens and the laughter comes out of connection, which is really, I think, is a really, really interesting thought. I started thinking about that as it relates to other times that people laugh when no joke was said, right? So they used to do it back in like a based on the television, saying, I didn't have one when I was a kid. I used to go to my neighbor's house and he had whatever. It was like, whatever. But they used to end TV shows with like a corny line and then laughter and like a freeze frame, right? It would be like, well, I guess I'm going home with a full bag of chips today. And everyone go, ha ha, you said it, right? Like, what are they laughing about? They're laughing because they actually solved the problem of the story because it's not actually funny. Another instance where I found laughter out of satisfaction, if you're a musician, you've experienced this before, you play a song with a bunch of people, you're jamming, and then when you end, everybody starts laughing. I've had that so many times. You start laughing. Why are you laughing? Like there was literally no joke that was said, but there's a satisfaction when human beings come together. And that type of laughter is the laughter that I focus on in terms of it relating to mental health and in terms of the growth, right? So throughout the conversation tonight, I would like to continuously be separating two piles, right? I want to be talking about the unifying laughter, the human laughter, the connection laughter, the satisfaction laughter. And I want to put in a different pile, the distancing laughter, because I think that's a lot of people's concern when it comes to laughter. There are a lot of times where laughter and jokes don't bring people together. And that's very real and very true. And, we're going to talk about a lot of different situations. And as we talk about those situations, sometimes things will go into one pile and sometimes they'll go into other piles. Before we jump into the next thing here, I wanted to mention one more thing here. Oh, it's that throughout our conversation, I might end up using laughter and playfulness interchangeably, and I will explain that at a certain point. But there's a good reason for that, and I don't want anybody to get confused with that. We do a lot of playing in our society, but we don't like to call it playing because it makes us feel childish, right? So I've referred to my therapy as play therapy for adults, and then I got no clients. And then I called it improv therapy, and people are like, well, that sounds useful. So playfulness, laughter, kind of interchangeably. That's the kind of the beginning of the conversation, but there's definitely a lot to unpack here. So I pass it back to you guys, and let's get into it.
Okay, we'll start off with a poll, and then we'll get into questions. Again, we have Yehudah over here, our improv in-house comedian, therapist. He's also a therapist, by the way. And we'll get into it. Anybody want to ask a question, please text over here to Asher Parnas. Live questions go first. And hopefully we can really understand the concepts and how to really gain from it. Okay, here we go. We'll just restart it. Okay, Menachem, let me know if you can see it, okay? You can see it? Okay, 3 questions.
No.
You can't see the poll?
No.
Okay, let's try it again.
Oh, yeah. Here it is. Got it.
I just relaunched it, so hold on, give it a second. You see it now?
Yep.
Okay, do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, do you consider laughter and humor an important part of life? 3 answers. Yes, absolutely. No, it's not really important. Or 3, yes, but only in small doses. So these are all just opinions, what you think. We'll get into it. I just want to get the concept going over here. Number 2, do you consider yourself a creative person? Yes, I've always been that way. Not at all. Yes, but I really don't do much with it. Or 3, I really don't think it matters on a day-to-day basis about being creative. Number 3, do you think deep belly laughter can be as healing an experience as crying out pain? Like, what's your opinion? Like, you think if you laugh your brains off about an experience or you cry about a certain situation, which is more healing? Do you think that belly laughter could be as healing? Yes, absolutely. No, not really. Laughter is a good relaxer, but it doesn't really heal you. Or option 3, laughter is a form of avoiding dealing with an issue. Those are the three questions, the three polls. Everybody answer whatever you really believe. We'll review with Yehudah, and then again, hopefully there'll be live questions. People will ask, and we'll try to cover a lot of stuff here. People send in a lot of questions. Do 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 do. Come on,
How do you know
Yehudah.
that? How do you know that song?
Sing it by the Pirchei.
Oh, right, that right.
Everybody should know Yehudah lives in Boca Raton. He's a regular yeshiva guy. He just wears the baseball cap to be cool. That's all.
I have it here. I'll wear it soon.
Okay, let's share the poll. Let's review the results. Okay. Do you consider laughter and humor as an important part of your life? 90% of the people here tonight believe yes, absolutely. 2% of people know it's not really important. 8% yes, but only in small doses. So I think most people here tonight believe laughter is a very important part of life.
Which that's actually very interesting because I wasn't expecting it to be that high. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
We're funny people.
You guys are hilarious.
Yeah, we're hilarious.
I don't know if everyone is as funny as you guys. The way you said my name last week, that was hilarious.
Oh, come on, Abacassis, don't be like that. Do you consider yourself a creative person? 41% of the people here find themselves to be creative. 18% not at all. 35% yes, but I really don't do much with this. Listen to this. It means 41 and 35% of the people here are creative. It means almost 76% of the people here are creative in one way or another. 6%, I don't think it really matters on a day-to-day basis. You do you want to say something about this?
There's a lot to get.
This is you the made up. So explain me what you're trying to get with this poll.
Oh, okay. So the first one or the second one? Where do you want to go?
The second one.
The second one. So this is the thing: is that creativity in our culture is something that's talked about as like the arts, right? It's like music, art, dancing, things like that. Now, if you really think about it, human beings are really designed to create things, and this is true in the psychology theory. It's true in Hashkafa also, in Jewish Hashkafa that we're created b'tselem Elokim, and we are mini creators. Hashem imbued within us the desire to create things. Rav Soloveitchik writes that that's why we are always pursuing some sort of creative endeavor, right? And so that means that there's a part of us that needs to create stuff. And when somebody doesn't view themselves as creative, they kind of don't take care of that part. And when somebody views themselves as creative, but they don't use it because it's not so productive and it's not so practical, so then that also is neglecting of that part. And it's going to tie back into everything that we're going to talk about tonight, which is, when we talk about a mentally healthy person, we usually consider looking for somebody who is balanced in a lot of areas of their life. Like nobody is going to be perfect in their brain, and they shouldn't be pursuing that. And, everyone's going to have anxiety on some level and depression or whatever. They're going to go through hard times. But, to be, in my opinion, and people could disagree on this, in my opinion, the ideal life has a creative component to it. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because it's part of that whole playfulness and that whole laughter thing.
We actually discussed last week the child self, the adult self, and the child self.
Yes,
and that's where the playfulness is. You want to bring it out, and that's why some people have a hard time connecting to it, because they're an adult.
Absolutely. I don't know if you want to keep going with the poll here, or if you want me to go off on a tangent, but I'm ready. I got a tangent locked and loaded.
Let's finish the poll. We'll get
all right.
We'll get into your childness.
Thank you. Oh wow.
Number three.
Nobody ever offers me that. That's so nice.
Number three, do you think deep belly laughter can be as healing as an experience as crying out in pain? 79% of people say yeah, absolutely, which I'm shocked that people picked up on that and believe that. 5% no, not really. 14% laughter is a good relaxer, but it does not heal you. 2% laughter is a form of avoiding dealing with an issue. So about 20% of the people really don't believe laughter could really in any way be as healing, but 79% of the people believe here that laughter could really heal.
Right. What'd you say?
Let's get into that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's it's very interesting. I think that I think most people can recall what it feels like to have a deep, good, solid belly laugh. I remember one time we were playing ping pong, and when I was in yeshiva, and I tried to like make this miraculous jump swing for some reason, and I twisted myself around in the air and I landed on my elbow, and I was laughing so hard because it was so ridiculous that I can still kind of like remember what that felt like, right? So I think most people can relate to the power of that type of laughter. The question of, is it healing or right? Or that I think we could debate a lot on that, because there's some people I can understand them saying like, listen, like that's very nice, but like, you know, I got a lot of stuff going on in my life. And, you know, that was a moment. It's like a good, I don't know, it was good French fries and it's gone and whatever, moving on. Right. So what the view on it is it, you know, can you view it as doing something more than just providing temporary pleasure or not?
Okay, let's get into it. A lot to talk about tonight. Okay, let's get into the first questions over here. Question number one, Yehudah. Somebody wrote, I've always heard people say humor is critical for mental health, but honestly, I'm not so sure. Sometimes it feels like laughing things off just makes it harder to address serious issues.
Yeah. So listen, so we're going to have these two piles here the entire night. Laughing things off, that has an implication of something which is not healthy and not helpful, right? So if somebody is going through something very serious and they themselves laugh it off, it's very possible that they're avoiding their feelings and the painful experiences that are there. So that, you know, that could go into this growth oriented kind of humor, right? So I definitely hear that with the term laughing it off. Especially true if you're laughing off someone else's painful experience, right? If you're like laughing while the guy is like, you know, in pain, then there's no way to view that as a part of a mentally healthy life. Now, putting those two things aside, when we live in our daily lives, we're battling with the fact that we are limited in our abilities, in our power to influence the world around us. And because we would like more power, right? We try to assert ourselves and make things happen in our lives. And we have this confusing balance of like, how much is me? How much is Hashem? How much is, right? How much is out of my control? How much is in my control? When somebody doesn't know how to laugh about things, in my opinion, it tends to look like somebody who's taking themselves too seriously and therefore believing that they have too much control. Does that make sense? Meaning, I don't know why it keeps giving me thumbs up, but I'm giving thumbs up. Meaning to say that when it's a simon and a siba, like we have to, they're both there, meaning that like someone who doesn't laugh takes themselves too seriously. Why do they take themselves too seriously? Maybe they hold themselves in too high of an esteem. Why do they do that? That's a defense mechanism for a more insecure and a shaky ego, right? Someone who does laugh at things, let's say a mistake that they made or a situation that isn't going right, that could indicate that in their internal world, they have some sense of confidence of, I will be able to adjust no matter what happens. We can make the best of the situation. I wasn't in control of all this in the first place, so it's not a personal hit to my ego if it doesn't go well, right? So you're on a road trip, you planned everything out, you get a flat tire, and you're laughing about it because you are like, we can always make the best of everything because I trust myself and I trust my abilities, right? So take any mental health disorder and you look at, Rabbi Twersky writing 96 books on self-esteem because he wrote all the time that at the core of every mental health disorder is a low self-esteem, right? So if someone has a low self-esteem, they have to protect themselves. If they have to protect themselves, what are they using to protect themselves? Sometimes laughter is a defense, but sometimes being too serious is a defense. That could be a defense just the same way. I'm going to like put my thumb in, like I'm going to hide my thumb so it stops giving me the thumbs up there on the Zoom thing there. I'm going to do the politician.
Go like this.
Yeah, right.
Go like this.
Oh, is it going to do it?
Go like this.
I don't know. It's appropriate.
Yes, 2 thumbs up.
Meaning to say that, right? So that if you are protecting yourself from, like if you're protecting the world from seeing your more fragile ego, you can do that through making jokes, but you can also do that through not making jokes. You can do that through refusing to laugh about things.
many times it could be a belief that people have. They're from, and they're doing the right thing,
Right.
and the laughter is, what life is not a joke.
Right.
So
Right. Life is not a joke, and I agree with that. But like life is serious, but we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. Right. And there's a fine line there. But I think it's very important to keep in mind, because some people will think that if you're laughing about something, you automatically are not taking it seriously. Right. But that's not always true.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. I just want to clarify with everybody on tonight. We're gonna get a little deeper, like how it works, like in the therapy part.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe we'll do some role playing and some improv. People get the concepts, but the questions are gonna go from all over now. So don't get, I feel like what happens is we start with the concept, we don't really clarify exactly how it works, and then questions come in. So as the show goes on, we'll try to really clarify it. Let's just do some questions that I think are important. So let's go to the first one. Hold on 1 second. Hi, Amir. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you explain that sometimes people, when they hear like bad news or very sad news, like somebody died, and instead of crying, they start to laugh? Can you explain that?
Yeah. As best as I can. It's when you hear something which is shocking, you have a response that's automatic. Now, when you hear something shocking, to start crying immediately would mean that you've accepted this information on some level, right? And that could be true. Sometimes somebody hears something and they start crying immediately, but somebody else their brain might be like, hey, what? This is not possible. This cannot be happening right now. So the first thing that pops out of their mouth is something which is like a different version of an extreme emotion, extreme emotional expression, right? And you could see that as from the outside as like, how does that make any sense? But from the inside, it's like your brain knows that there's something extreme going on, but it's not ready to accept it. So it starts like grappling with the reality. Like maybe it's a joke, or maybe I just need to start like allowing some of the emotion is just so strong, it just bubbles out, but it's not going to be crying because I haven't really emotionally wrapped my head around this yet, right? There's so many different types of laughter, and like we tend to think that we understand laughter because we know what makes us laugh. But when you hear somebody else laughing in a painful situation like that, it's you may not understand like what is actually happening for them internally. It just might be confusing from the outside.
What's my reaction supposed to be?
What is that?
What's my reaction supposed to be?
Well, I think it's the kind of thing that when there's really bad news that's coming in, that you're going to live moment to moment in those kind of situations. Like you're not going to get bogged down by what's happening in the first 10 seconds of it and think that that's kind of the direction that things are going, right? Because it's going to change so rapidly, right? So when you receive bad news, you can have somebody who's numb for like 20 minutes and then all of a sudden yells once and then goes back to being numb, right? Or you can have someone who's numb for days, or you can have someone who's laughing and crying on and off. So you kind of like in that situation, you don't have to do very much. I believe you just have to really just be there with the person, and there's no right or wrong on their end. And if you're there with them and saying like, listen, I'm here with you no matter what you need. So then you're going to still be there with them as it ebbs and flows and it changes.
And I obviously don't have to laugh with them.
No, you don't have to laugh with them. I think it's an interesting thing whenever, you go to a Shiva house and, I don't know, we're talking about like all this like darker stuff, but, you said I was going to make jokes. So I have to make some jokes soon, but not now. The Shiva, when you go to a Shiva house, I'm sure we've all been there before, where there's like a lot of laughter with the people who are sitting Shiva. And sometimes it makes people uncomfortable. But if you think about it, for them, assuming they're not being disrespectful to the person who just passed away, for them, it's actually really great. And you don't have to like make jokes too, right? Like you can be with them. You can laugh when they laugh. But sometimes people get uncomfortable because they think that it's wrong, but it's actually not. It's not. It's actually, you know, sometimes we're processing information, and that's part of the reason why we laugh.
Fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let's go to the next one, Yehudah.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much. This is a very good conversation. How can I access deep belly laughter when I feel like I could use it? It's like I want to externalize something and I want it, and I've had a good experience before. How do I do that?
Oh, I'm so excited that you asked that question.
Are we talking about we're trying to heal from a trauma that, or we're just in the mood of feeling?
I don't think so. I feel like there's just a lot going on in day-to-day life, and there's maybe also, you know, bigger stuff, and you know, like, let's laugh and just like get stuff out.
That's
like,
why I brought Yehudah on this week. It was just such a stressful week.
Yes, I think I love this question. I love this question because how can we actually do it in our lives, right? Because if we know the experience,
and for my family, if I see that, you know, this tension, big ones, little ones, you know, big kids, little kids, and a good laughter is something that, you know, breaks the flow or brings in different energy.
Yes. So I want to tell you something. When I started doing improv, I had done a lot of improv type of things.
I just want to clarify, just not everybody knows what improv is. I don't know if everybody knows, but improv, do you want to explain it?
No, you go.
Improv is basically when you put two people on a stage and they have to act out a scene. There's no prep.
Masha, try it out with Yehudah. Let's go.
I will. I'll try it out. But
basically, try it out soon. Yeah.
I don't know how you do it on Zoom, but I'm saying like in real life, like my mother-in-law's from Milwaukee, like they have a place which they actually do improv. It's called Comedy Sports. Like we used to go there and they say play out a scene, and they had to like play out the scene without any communication. It was just like, and the laughter that came out of it, even though like you just said, it wasn't like so funny, some of the jokes, but it was just like to watch how they coordinated it. It was hysterical. Like the whole place on the floor. So it's basically putting together a scene that ends up coming funny because it's like, I don't want to use it's not like slapstick type of comedy, but it does come off like that. So that's what it is. I just want to clarify.
Yes. When I started doing improv, I had been doing improv kind of things my entire life. You know, there were many years when I was in yeshiva where my year revolved around the summer and Purim, and then back to the summer and then back to Purim. And so as soon as the summer ended, I started writing Purim material, and I would work on it until Purim, and then we would talk about it for a couple months until the summer started, right? So I was very comfortable doing scenes, characters, joking around, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I used to pride myself on was I never broke in a scene. And what that means is when you start laughing in the middle of a scene because of something that your fellow actor did, I would never break. And then at a certain point, after doing improv for a while, I started breaking, which seems like I'm going in the wrong direction. But what I realized is that I was more uptight when I started improv, and then I started loosening up. And because I was loosening up, I was actually allowing the funniness around me to influence me. When I first started, I actually had a little bit of a wall up, even though I was doing comedy and I was playing around and I was doing characters. I had a little bit of a wall up, and I thought it was a good wall because it actually kept me more focused on the scene. But what it was doing was it was keeping me away from moments that were fun and connecting. Now, I think that a lot of times as adults, we move away from our child self, like you guys were talking about last week. We move away from our child self for a lot of reasons. Some of those reasons are really great, because if we were an adult that was acting like a child, then that would not be good, right? But then there are artificial ones. There are ones that kind of get like, they just like sneak their way in with the real ones. And some of those artificial ones are like, let's say, professionalism, right? So if you want to be a professional, you can do that if you want to, but are you using that as like a protection to keep yourself away from the, you know, laughter and silliness and, you know, I'm serious man and I have to be professional all of the time. And so those type of things that kind of keep us away from allowing laughter to influence us makes it that we don't get to the point where we're belly laughing. So we might chuckle about something, and then there's a part of us that goes, oh, because of who I am, or because of how I'm going to be judged, I have to rein this back in, right? So one piece of it is considering that there are times in our lives where being playful might feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort has zero consequences. And it's a really, really important piece of all this is that the reason why we have discomfort socially is to teach us something, to tell us, don't do that because that's going to impact you negatively. But there are also times where that discomfort means absolutely nothing. Right. And so if that discomfort means absolutely nothing, so then it's worth powering through. And then if we power through it enough times, then we become a little more loose. And then there's a moment that comes along, and then we just get immersed in that moment, and we laugh like we haven't laughed in years.
Okay.
Sometimes it depends also in your settings. You know, some people you can go out with friends, you feel more comfortable, and that's how you can get to a place where you can let it all out. For other people, it's harder when they're in a professional setting. You have to know where you are.
Oh, 100%. You have to know where you are, right? And the goal of this conversation is not to say that everybody should be a goofball all the time, but I'm going to refer back to Menachem saying, you know, where's a place where you can take off your jacket? Some people who have no place that they can take off their jacket really they're that tight all of the time. And to be that tight all of the time, I don't see it as part of a healthy life, but B, like, well, that's not very fun.
Okay, let's go to the next question. You're on.
Next question.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm on. Thank
Hello.
you. I'm loving this conversation and I can't wait for the laughter to come on more. So I wanted to ask basically that sometimes I do find myself in more like a tricky state where sort of the tears get choked up and then the laughter gets stuck as well. So it's like I would try talking to Hashem like, Hashem, okay, I'm feeling this and that, but it's like as if there's no one to connect with because it's just like as if the system just goes numb in me. So I was wondering if there's something like a bypass way or like a way through it with laughter or some sort of way to like get out of that numbness or like in the numbness to be able to feel it, something to sort of help it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the question that was in the poll about is a belly laugh the same as a good cry? I would say yes. And the reason why I would say yes is because they're both intense expressions of emotion. Now, if you're blocked in your emotions, so then you're not going to be able to do either of those things, right? Now, the thing with laughter is that, and being playful and all of that, is that you can have so much pain that you feel like it doesn't even make sense to laugh. Like there's nothing to laugh about. Like life is not funny. And the pain is actually what's keeping you numb. So then you're just like, forget the whole thing, right? I think about, you know, and this is my, you know, my religious take. I think about Hashem creating everything and creating laughter and creating crying. And I feel like, you know, it's a cliche, like God has a sense of humor. But I feel like you can tell Hashem, like, wasn't that hilarious yesterday? Like, why can't you say that to Hashem? Like, that was a good one, right? Like, Hashem, like, the way that you lined it up, like, this is what me and my comedy nerd buddies do. After we perform, we go, the way you set that up was amazing. And you kind of like review it and you relive it again. You can incorporate that as a part of your relationship with Hashem. I think that's very appropriate. Now, doing that would mean that you actually have to be able to do that on your own. And that goes into this other area of, you know, if you're afraid of judgment outside of in the world, then you're afraid of that same judgment even when no one's around. Right? So I did this for a little while where I was starting my day with putting on a song and dancing in my office by myself. And I felt so stupid doing it. I felt so stupid. And like, I think I might have even said out loud, this is stupid at one point. And like, literally nobody's there. There's no possibility. It's 6 a.m, double doors are locked. It's just me and the song, and I feel stupid doing it, right? So why do I feel stupid doing it? This is actually part of Viola Spolin's theory about improvisation. I feel stupid doing it because I assume that if somebody saw me doing it, they would judge me negatively. And I've taken that to heart so much that I believe that they're almost with me, watching me and judging me. And she writes that it comes to the point where you see with others' eyes and smell with others' noses. Meaning you look at yourself and you're not even seeing with your own eyes because you're seeing with what you perceive as the judgment the outside world would have if they saw you doing this, right? So you talking to Hashem and joking around with Hashem would also require you to be a little more playful within yourself, which is really, really difficult. But at least this idea is a good starting point. The idea is that any judgment that you feel is discomfort with no consequence. So you can look in the mirror and you can make a silly face and nothing's going to happen to you. And then maybe you do that enough times that you get comfortable saying to Hashem, that was really funny yesterday. Thanks for making that joke. Or whatever.
Okay, Yehudah, let's get into it. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Question. Somebody sent in, sometimes it feels like joking around just masks deeper issues instead of addressing them. Do you really think humor makes people more vulnerable and connect, or is it just a way to avoid conversations?
So it definitely can be a way to avoid conversations. And I will tell people, well, clients that I work with, like we joke around and then I'll be like, nope, we're not joking right now. This, hold that joke for 20 minutes. So there is such a thing as masking it, but it's very easy to assume that all humor is just a masking. I think that that's a little bit of a cop-out in understanding something which is so complex and nuanced. When we joke around with other people and it's in that unifying humor category, it's part of sometimes such a deep, wonderful relationship. The kind sometimes that, you 30 years later, you can still be joking around with the same person. And so, I think people sometimes, paint with a really broad brush when they say like humor is just a defense or a way of kind of blocking things out. Think about the times where you laugh with other people and think about what that means to your relationship. I have a friend that I met when we were 5 years old in Simcha Day Camp. And then up in Far Rockaway, and then we were in the same yeshivas for like the next 20 years together. And now he lives in Israel, and I don't get to see him very often. He came into Florida 2 years ago, and I picked him up. We went to the Grove, the grocery store here. We got some like chicken wings. We're eating them in his car, and we're laughing hysterically after not seeing each other for 6 years, and we're not even in like a fun place. We're just eating these, slimy chicken wings in a parking lot, but we're laughing hysterically. And that's because we built a relationship where we trust each other. We can be ourselves around each other. And then the jokes that he make is really a reference to all the history that we've had together. And it reminds me of how connected I've been to him, how connected he's been to me. And it becomes such a central part of expressing our connection and building our connection simultaneously. I want to add to this. I think something that's really funny is how we go on shidduch dates and we play around on shidduch dates, right? Like we go on these shidduch dates where it's like, well, on the first date, take her to a lounge and bring a board game, right? Why are you bringing a board game? Oh, it's just to break the ice, right? I don't go to Dave & Buster's until the 4th date. Like all of these games, right? Some people say bowling is good, mini golf is good, right? So you go on a bunch of dates where you play games with this person, and then you go, all right, I think we have a great time together. Now let's get serious, right? And it's crazy because we build a relationship through playing, and then we say, well, you're embarking on a serious endeavor, so now we have to get serious. And if you're not careful, slowly the play starts to leave your life and the laughter starts to leave your life. And then you end up, having a business partner that you live with, which, is not ideal, right? So we actually use play to build connection and we don't realize it. Like we think that play and laughter is something that you only do on certain occasions, only like, Purim, or like only, whatever, like only certain times a year.
The question is, how do you really balance both? Because you do need both in marriage. You can't have just play.
Correct.
You can't
Correct.
just
But let me ask you
married
this.
for 40 years with board games. You run out of board games.
40 years of board games. That sounds terrible. Let me ask you this though. In your opinion, how would you feel? What do you think you hear more of? Do you hear more of people who play too much in their marriage or people who are too serious in their marriage?
I think most people that I'm understanding that there's certain the playfulness or whatever you want to call it, the inner child or the improv guy, whatever you want to like, sort of dies out as life gets tougher and stressful, and we give up on that young laughter, enjoying, and the serious part takes over, and it takes over in such an extent where you just like everything becomes dry. It's like almost like a worn out, like one of those sun-dried tomatoes. And
Those are
everything,
delicious though, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
but really sun-dried. It's like it's so
Oh.
right? It's like
Like a
crispy.
raisin.
It's like a raisin, right? And it just like, and I think that's where people get stuck. And then when you try to humor, so it was actually very interesting. Somebody, whatever, I'll get into it soon. It's the next question. But point is that I think where we need to sort of figure out that balance is even being mature, 35-year-old, 45-year-old lawyer, doctor, professional therapist like you, like where do we get to enjoy life in our marriage, with our children, with our friends, in shul, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are places where shul is a serious place. You can't sit there and make jokes, but in a certain sense, there's a part of shul that is meant to be enjoyable and have a good time and see your friends. And there is a social aspect of synagogue, right? Let's be honest. Otherwise, it's pretty depressing.
Right.
See the Shalitfish.
Right.
Yeah, but you also mentioned with your friend that you knew. The question is the people that you don't know. The
Right.
improv, you're getting to meet them the first time, your guards are up.
Yes. So with somebody it's always easier to make jokes because you know the
Also,
limits.
somebody
Yeah.
like, and I have had this many times, like somebody the level. Again, there's different levels of jokes you can make with certain people, right? Certain people
Right.
can make so much more deeper levels of jokes. I don't want to go. I'm not talking about like inappropriate, not visiting inappropriate. I'm talking about like just making more of like a joke and take things light. And for certain people, you can make like a lighter joke, right?
Yeah.
But those, because you know the boundaries and you know how the relationship works with the person. So when you meet new people, you have to know how to like have that sensitivity. But anyway, I feel like we're skipping. Let's go back to what we're saying.
Okay.
Like, how do we go through that life when life starts hitting us with children and finances and problems and sorrows, and the world is so depressing and CNN, and you watch that debate and you just want to like, this is the world I live in. Are you kidding me?
I was laughing the whole time. You didn't think that was funny at all?
It was so beyond funny that it was depressing. It was so funny.
Yeah, it was a little sad.
So much I was depressed. It was like,
yeah. No, I my favorite, but sorry, I'm gonna go off here for a second here, but he really behaved himself. He really did a great job behaving himself. I'll tell you that, by the way, because every time he looked over, he said, he didn't say what he was thinking. So I did appreciate his great job that he did. So there was that. Anyways,
to the question is like, when we get so difficult with life and life becomes so hard, how do we tap into that playfulness and that enjoyment? I think that could pull us out of depression. I think it could pull us out of. I know I'm talking for myself, my own personal things. When you go through hard things, again, it doesn't always work. But if you can get your mindset to make light of it and to joke a little bit about it, or even just realize like, okay, it's so hard, let me just relax and enjoy myself, it could really pull you out of very deep places. The problem is when you're so down, you don't even like that laughter tool is like dead.
Right. So I want to mention two things here, and if it's okay, I'd like to kind of merge into one of our exercises. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there is such a thing as selfish humor, and selfish humor is like, I would put it in the category of pranks. Like, I don't like pranks and I don't appreciate pranks. I don't think that they're nice. I asked somebody the other day to open one of my tennis balls, one of the cans. I was like, you open it. It's like, it's a little, it's a chashuv thing. Like, you open it. And she was like, is it going to blow up in my face? Is it a prank? I was like, that's not my style of jokes. I don't make those kind of jokes, because those jokes, somebody feels stupid.
Those are degrading.
Right. So they're degrading, right? There's obviously this bullying and that type of humor, making fun of someone else, right? So sometimes you could be having a hard time in your personal life and you could say, I need a joke around, but then you're no longer considering what the other person needs. And that can happen in a marriage where you're spending time together and you're like, listen, I got to be playful, and the other person's not there with you. Not that they can't get there with you, but if you force it, that's actually not, A, it's not cool, but B, it's not helping your marriage. It's not helping your relationship. And so in improv, the number one principle of improv is what we call yes and. Yes and is when your scene partner puts something in the reality of the story that you're telling, you say yes to it first, and then you add something to it. Meaning to say that if somebody says, hey, I got you this gold watch for your birthday, you don't say it's not my birthday, and that's not a gold watch. The whole thing falls apart as soon as you start saying no. So first thing you have to do is you have to say yes. The second thing you have to do is you have to add something. And the reason why you have to add something is because you are a valid member of this scene as well. And so you say, thank you. I know you know I've always wanted a gold watch, and I think it'll go great with the gold earrings that you got me. Whatever. The point is that you've now added to the story. So you've done something simultaneously where you respected the other person and you also contributed. When you think about marriage, a lot of times people think about it in this like yes or no kind of thing. Is it like me or you, right? Like, am I standing up for my needs? Am I setting my boundaries? Or am I being mevater? It's important to be mevater. It's important to be mevater. Your spouse didn't marry you so that you could do exactly what they want at all times. They didn't, because then they would have stayed single, because it'd been a lot easier if they just wanted to be with their own thoughts. You're not there to just do whatever they want whenever they say it. They want you to contribute. Men get stuck on this all the time. Their wife goes, what do you want to eat for supper? And he goes, I don't know. And she goes, no, like, tell me what you want. It's like, what I want whatever you want, right? I want whatever you want is not an answer, because you're saying yes, but you're not saying and. The and is she's asking you because that you're her husband. And really what she's asking for is, show me that you're a confident person that is listening and caring and all that, blah, 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 blah. But saying I want what you want is not contributing at all. So the idea of yes and is the beginning of every single improv scene. So I'd like to do a little bit of yes anding with you guys. Yeah?
Sure.
All right.
Everybody should know this is real improv. We did not discuss this.
Yeah, they're asking me all week, what are we going to do? You'll find out. All right. So between the two of you guys, yeah, I'd like for you to, if you could, I'm going to give you a suggestion of a location where you guys are. And I want you guys to just start every sentence with yes and, except for the first one, and no questions. Okay, so any question, just turn it into a statement. So do you know what time it is not going to help. Move it along. All right. You guys good? You guys are going to do this one without me.
No, start again. How do we do that?
All right. You guys are making up a story in front of this live audience.
Story. Okay.
You're making up a story in front of this live audience. All right. But you guys are actors in this story. It's more of a play than a story.
Okay.
All right. Now, I'm going to give you a one-word suggestion. That's all I'm going to give you. I'm not even going to give you the location. I'm just going to give you a one-word suggestion. All right. And then we'll see how it develops. All right. I'm going to ask you this right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious does this make you?
32.
Nice.
If yours is 32, then I'm 59.
Awesome. All right. Excellent. Okay.
But basically, it's yes and continue the conversation. No questions. No.
So yeah. So right. So only statements. Meaning, if you ask a question, you tend to box
an answer. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They got to answer the question. How long have you been here for? They can't say anything other than a number, right? So you're
just rattling off statements that come to your mind.
Right. And so the key here is that you guys are going to listen to each other, because you have to know what you're saying yes to, right? Because if you say yes and I got you whatever, I don't know, balloons, and the scene was in a hospital, I mean, that might work, but you understand what I'm saying. Anyways, all right. So one word suggestion to inspire your scene, and then either one of you are going to start, and then we'll see where it goes. All right.
We'll go first.
Oh, sure. Look at that. Look at that.
Yes and.
Yeah, there you go. All right, your suggestion is going to be office plans. Go ahead.
Osher, I got some new office plans for you.
Yes, and that has a beautiful view over the beach.
Yes, and you'll be able to sit there every day and just drink your cold lemon soda.
And be able to fall asleep. Yes, and be able to sleep and hear the sound of the ocean.
Yes, and maybe one day I'll come visit.
Yes, and hopefully one day we'll have something to talk about.
Yes, and who else is going to be there?
Oh,
Oops.
there's a question. Yeah. So make it a
Yes,
statement.
and it'll be a lot of fun with a lot of friends.
And hopefully we'll have this guy, Yehudah Alcabes, come over. We'll get a beer.
Yes, and orange juice.
All right, scene. All right, clap it up. Okay, so well, let me check in with you first before I go on my spiel. How did that feel?
It's just interesting because it's funny but there's nothing. That one thing we said was actually funny. It was all stupid.
It was all stupid. Yeah, it was all stupid.
That's from Menachem's lines. That's from Menachem's lines. No, I'm joking.
Thank you.
Menachem's lines were way better than yours. Yeah.
No,
Oops.
yes, and it was good.
Yes. So, but it's stupid, right? I mean,
Right.
there's nothing really happening there. Menachem, what did you
What happens to
think?
be? I want to mention one thing. Improv,
Yeah.
when it's in person, and I've seen it, it's 10 times more funny than verbal. Because there's a
Yes.
lot of things you could do with motions and looks that you can't do on Zoom that I've seen.
Yeah. Oh, in person, you use the whole stage. You mime objects, things like that. But even with the words, right? Think about what would have happened if you would have said, "What was I got you this office plant," right? So actually, what would you if you said no, but something like that? Oh, I got you this office plant. Like, what would you say then? Like if you started with no but instead of yes and.
I have no idea.
You try it. Say any statement, anything but started with no but.
No but, yes. I mean, no yes and.
No,
Yeah,
but I'm too
don't-
busy.
I mean, do but instead of yes and.
Yeah.
So Menachem said, "Oh, you got this new office,
Oh, okay, this office plant.
but it's very, very dirty. It needs to be cleaned."
Right. And so
But it's
Menachem,
negative.
right. So it's negative and it's actually like your whole energy changes. You're like, you kind of like, you go like, right. And it's kind of like pushing the other person away. And so the yes and is not natural to
Because
us.
general concept in therapy, they always tell you is that when you're speaking in therapy, whether to your spouse or somebody else, you could say, you're an amazing person. But the second you say but,
Right.
sort of negates all the positive he said. Oh, you're such an amazing therapist. I'm letting you
Thank
know.
you.
You're brilliant.
Thank you.
But you're a little bit, and then everything I just said, delete. So if I want to say
Right.
something, you say, you're a really great therapist and you're such a smart guy. And
Positive.
Right. 100%. And the energy that comes off you is different. When you're saying no, but even just in our one exchange there, right? Like I saw your face, even over Zoom, I could see kind of like you sit back a little bit and you kind of like, no, but it's dirty. Right. And that doesn't feel good to receive that back from somebody. It doesn't feel good. And it also doesn't add anything to the situation. When you do no but enough times back and forth, my assumption would be that your guys' scene would end up being just about how you should clean the plants. It usually stays focused on one object and one like useless topic. That's what happens when you go no but. Now the thing is that many of us are very uncomfortable with the yes part of the yes and because we're afraid to give up control in a lot of situations, right? So I gave this talk once, talking about shalom bias and using yes and somebody asked me afterwards, like, yes and is such a nice idea, but like, what if my husband's ideas are stupid? And I was like,
Yes,
I can't imagine that they're all stupid. That you wanted to marry somebody that's just very stupid, right? Like meaning like you don't generally pick a spouse that's just all the time stupid. So what happens a lot of times is that when we're in a creative space, we're protective over our ideas and we don't want to let it go of control. And so when someone else comes up with an idea, we kind of like get a little bit like shifty and uncomfortable and we do something like, nah, I don't know if that's going to work. We tried that in the past, or like, it's a nice idea, but if it's at the very beginning of a creative process, you actually don't know what this idea could morph into if you continue to add to it. So it's actually a very uncomfortable thing to train yourself to do, because it's not naturally how we work. I was doing improv for a while and I had an improv teacher tell me that he gave me a note in the scene that you just did. Your scene partner, you guys were on a plane. Your scene partner was bumping up and down during the turbulence, but you weren't. So you didn't yes and the turbulence, right? So meaning like I thought I was like already a master of yes and, but he was like, if you really truly were listening and appreciating to what your partner was adding, when you saw him bumping, you would have been bumping up and down too, because there's no plane where one person bumps up and down from turbulence and the guy next to him doesn't. So this, yeah, go ahead.
Being in the same page, being in the same place, feeling each other, having the same conversation instead of saying no and goodbye.
Right, right. But it's so hard to do, and especially when it's a marriage, it's a long-term relationship. It's so hard to do. If your spouse says, "Hey, we really should go out Tuesday night," and you go, "Listen, Tuesday, I have a long day on Tuesday. I mean, I get home at 8. Like, you want to go out at 8:15?"
So what should you say? Let's hear. Yes.
Yes, and. So
let's get another question. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. I was just curious if you find that, when somebody's using humor to, to release tension or pain, do you find that after like that good belly laugh, do they also cry? Does it bring on the tears, or is the belly laugh enough to relieve them?
So it depends on the situation, and it depends on the person. I sometimes it could go into, once we open the extreme emotion and we're really playing in that arena, then yeah, it can go into crying.
Yeah,
and
I've
that
had
can
it
be healthy.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Felt like really deep belly laughs, and then tears of laughter came out. It was
Right.
Like I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Right. It's that yeah, that's confusing, and that it could be a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. Like why extreme laughter and extreme crying kind of sound the same, while they why do they sometimes look the same? Like that's something that's too cold can burn you, right? So it's like you can get into a whole philosophy thing there. I think that sometimes it opens it up in a way that people could be crying afterwards, but there also are times where people feel satisfaction that they've reconnected to another person, and that could indirectly heal that wound. So part of the reason why I'm on this kind of like mission here, and I'm willing to put myself out there wearing this unprofessional baseball cap, is because I do think that we are in our society, we're talking about our problems too much. And so, we live in a time where we don't have to focus on survival at every second of the day. We have roofs over our head and we have running water, and we can sit around for long enough to think about our problems and talk about our problems. And while I'm a huge fan of therapy, because I wouldn't do it if I wasn't a fan of therapy, and therapy changed my life for many, many, many years, and continuously it still does, I also realized that we can talk ourselves deeper into our problems when really what we needed is to do an action of connecting to someone else. I actually realized this before improv when I started playing tennis during COVID, which was really interesting because tennis is a sport where you stand 90 feet away from each other. And I was playing tennis because I was getting a little out of shape, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to move. And I started developing friendships through tennis, which is actually the amount of time that you talk when you play tennis is very small. Even if you're out there for 3 hours, you might say something small to each other when you're changing sides, but that's really it. And I realized that I started developing friendships through playing this game and through spending time with other people, and that it was changing the way that I was feeling about myself. And while I really believe in talking about our problems, there comes a time where if we look at our entire self, are there parts of ourselves that we notice are not being taken care of? And are some of those parts in the activity-based parts of ourselves? Are they in the connection, but not in the connection through problems? Maybe they're in the connection through play, right? And so that's kind of a lot of why I think it's so important for us to have these type of discussions here, so that people could go out and be more playful and connected when dealing with a problem, which yes, you do need to talk about with your therapist, but after your therapy session's over, don't call your friend and say, this is what I talked about in my therapy session. And don't go online and post, hey, my therapist just told me this. Go bowling or something. Go call a friend and be like, let's I don't know, let's go play tennis. right? Because we need that. We need to actually connect to people. And sometimes that can be more healing than talking about the problems.
And it changes you. It changes from a state.
Yes.
You're always in that state of your problem, and we want to get out of it, so we go to therapy. But this, if you can do it, it can get you
right
out.
And this is why also I will offer it to my clients. They can always turn it down, but I will say, you know, today it looks like it'd be helpful if we played guitar instead of talking, or today it looks like it would be helpful if we went out to the tennis court instead of talking. And you can tell me if you don't see it the same way. I'm totally accepting of that. But maybe take this chance with me. And it, you know, a lot of times it actually pans out to be something really, really useful because they were neglecting that part and they didn't know that they were neglecting it.
Okay, Yehudah, let's get into the next question over here.
Let's do it.
I've been through very embarrassing trauma, and every time I try to talk about it, it's too hard and uncomfortable. People tell me to do psychedelics to try to help me discuss it, but I'm scared to go down that road. If I try this kind of comedy therapy, would it be easier for me to discuss embarrassing situations that I've been through?
Okay. So first of all, it's important for us to always keep in mind that when we're talking about embarrassing situations and traumatic things that we've went through, is that we don't expect everyone in the world to be safe and accepting of those things. It's silly to expect that because nobody has things that are understood by every single person on the planet, especially if it's something which is embarrassing and difficult for you to think about and difficult for you to talk about. So my first thought is like, where do you go that you feel like you are safe enough to have those type of conversations? I have friends that I will have certain conversations with, and then I won't have certain other conversations with those friends because I know like this is not their space. It's not like their area of specialty. So that's first of all. Second of all, I want, in terms of psychedelics. Okay. So I'm gonna rant here. I usually move to a specific location when I'm ranting, but I know I have to stay in front of the camera. But I usually move there just so that I'm time limited. I'm gonna rant here for a moment. Time me. I don't think that psychedelics are bad. I don't think that they are something that nobody should use. And I think there are some people that have had very positive experiences with psychedelics. I also think that a lot of people are trying to rush their growth through jumping into psychedelics and make their mind open in a way that, it'd be amazing if their mind could open up like that. But I don't see it long term. I work with a lot of people who say, I think I should try psychedelics. They try psychedelics and they still struggle with the same things the next day and the next week. So I'm not against psychedelics, but I think people should understand that when you're using a substance to open up parts of your mind, generally it doesn't open up those parts of your mind long term. A, and B, there are risks with psychedelics, which I don't think the therapy community is properly addressing, in my opinion. I don't think that the therapy community is actually saying the full picture of, like, for some people, it might trigger mania. For some people, if they have a substance abuse history, just don't do a substance to try to make yourself feel better. Just don't do it. Try other routes that are non-substance related. That's kind of my shtick on psychedelics. Now, I will tell you that I started doing improv, and I do it consistently. I train every single week. At a certain point, about a year ago, I realized that I don't want to drink alcohol at all in my life anymore. I'm not an alcoholic. I never had a problem with alcohol. I definitely used it too much when I was younger, but it wasn't a problem in my life. But what I realized was I drank alcohol to loosen up, but I trained myself to loosen up. So I was drinking alcohol and I wasn't sure if I was drunk. And that never happened to me in my life. I drank a lot of alcohol and I was like, I don't know. I mean, I feel loose, but I felt loose 3 hours ago. Am I drunk? I don't know. Not really sure. And what I realized was that I was using alcohol to give myself permission to be loose, meaning sometimes it's permission from other people, like, oh, we're all drinking, so you can be loose and playful, but sometimes it's just permission for yourself. Oh, I'm sitting down and I'm drinking now, so I can joke around a little bit. Like, why do you need permission? And why do you need permission with something which, I don't know, it might not be healthy for you. It might be healthy for you. Everybody's different. For me, it doesn't really add that much to my life, you know, and I have Sephardi genes and Ashkenazi genes, and the Ashkenazi genes make my stomach very weak. So I realized I don't need alcohol in my life anymore, and I don't drink alcohol anymore. And I like it. And it's great because I don't go to sleep with acid. It's beautiful. So when you talk about like using something to open yourself up, I'm more of a fan of the long-term, you know, grind it out, but make a permanent change kind of way of going about it. And, you know, improv is one way of doing it, but any way that opens up that creative self, that it'll feel uncomfortable, but you stick with it long enough, eventually it becomes a space where you travel to on your own, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but it becomes your beautiful little space where you doodle or you dance with you know, with the office door locked, but it becomes your beautiful space where you get to be yourself and you get to reconnect to yourself.
Again, if a person's having a hard time opening up in therapy, and again, assuming that, let's say they want to do it the right way, not through psychedelics, do you think if they use this form of therapy, people or improv, you think they can get to the comfortable place to talk about something that's embarrassing?
Yes, I do. I would preface it by saying that the beginning is always going to be uncomfortable, right? I asked you guys on a scale of 1 to 10, and I got a 32 and a 59 out of 10, just from our little exercise.
And how do you start with a new client? What does it look like in your office?
With improv specifically?
Yeah.
So it depends. Because I have a group. So having them join the group is the easiest way to have somebody get comfortable, because the group picks you up. When you're in a room full of people acting silly, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable, but I guess everybody's acting silly, and then you connect to them and you guys start laughing together, then you can ease into that comfort much faster than when it's just me and a client. But when it's just me and a client, it's always gradual, because I never expect anybody to go from 0 to 60 in a second. And I do everything with them. And that's very intentional, because as a therapist, considering self-disclosure is very important, of like when to self-disclose and how to self-disclose and what to self-disclose. But I'm not self-disclosing any parts of my life that are going to burden my client or harm them when I'm doing improv with them, right? If I were to say, listen, you know, I know what you're going through because I have trauma, blah, 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 right? Like, let's leave that out of here. But when I say, all right, now we're going to warm up and we're just going to walk around the room, and, you know, we're going to focus on one part of our body to kind of lead us into making up a character. And they're walking, and I'm like, all right, give this guy a name, give this guy a job. Like, I do it too. And then when we meet face to face and I'm like, what's up? My name is Tim and I work in a mechanic shop, right? So I'm doing it with them, and it makes them uncomfortable, but it also lets them know that I'm not going to just like tell you to do stuff and embarrass yourself and like be like, I promise it's good for you, but I'm not doing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's go to the next question. Hi, how are you?
Hi. Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks for taking my question. So first of all, I just want to go back to the, what did you call it? Yes, and just comment that I think that is, that should be a rule in all relationships. And I think that then there'll be much less problems. Okay, so the question I posed was, what if someone's a rigid type person who does not appreciate humor? And I think that what my question is, like this previous question was, what if somebody has something that they're very uncomfortable about, and could this help? I mean, I think the answer is that if someone's not looking to be helped, then you can't help them. But yeah, there are some people that are very tight. They're difficult because they're just so tight. They're so rigid. And they don't appreciate humor. If you'd make a joke, they did get angry at you.
Yes. So doing this for someone else, unfortunately, we can't do it. You kind of have to open it up on your own. And if they're not ready to open it up, then they're not ready to open it up. But even somebody who, let's say, is not particularly funny and doesn't really like joking around, there's humor in life. There's so many different types of humor. I'll tell you, I once went to the New York Philharmonic on purpose, and there was a moment where, like, in between I want to say the songs, but they're not songs. But the whole band did something. The whole orchestra did something, and all of the classical music nerds in the crowd chuckled. And I have no idea what was funny about the sound that they made. But if you know, you know, you're in on that joke. You're in on that joke. It's a pretty nerdy joke, I would assume. Like maybe they played a C sharp when they were supposed to. I don't know. I have no idea. But like they chuckled, and it was a nice moment for them. And so like people think of humor as you have to be funny and you have to be likable and you have to be witty and you have to be quick. Do you find those moments in life that make you chuckle? It could be that you look at spreadsheets all day and there's something about the spreadsheet that makes you chuckle. Do you chuckle, or do you push it aside because you're being too serious, or you're saying like, you know, I shouldn't be laughing about things, or you chuckle?
I'll just say the standard. Yeah. I'll say the classic. I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for a friend.
Oh, that's great. I'm asking her for a friend. No, so within every relationship.
But I just was saying, what, you know, let's say you're in a relationship with a very difficult person, and for whatever relationship is, and that person does not appreciate humor. So you're going to come in with humor?
Well, you got to meet them where they're at. I mean, that's a cliche, but you got to meet them where they're at with, you know, in terms of like what actually opens them up, right? So like people do this at the beginning of a speech where they say a joke and then they go straight into in this week's Pasha. Okay. The reason why they say the joke is because they were taught that's how you start a speech. You say a joke and then you say in this week's Pasha. Now, usually crowds don't like that because they know that they're being manipulated. Crowds feel that. They're like, okay, all right, so the joke was just to get me to like laugh and now be open, but now I'm open, so you're not going to joke anymore. So then you lied to me, basically, right? When you're honest with the people, with your audience, and you respect your audience, you can make a joke that's directed at them and they can appreciate it. So if your audience is one and that person is uptight, you might actually look for the joke, which is going to be small and maybe not your favorite joke, but you know it's going to get them to chuckle a little bit. And you do it with respect. Like, I respect where you're coming from. I'm not doing this to then say, now that I got you laughing in this week's Pasha. You do it in a way that's like, I know that this makes you chuckle, and I appreciate you, and I want to make you chuckle a little bit. Right. And then that might open up a little bit more, but it really matters what position you take internally when you make that move.
Yes, thank you.
So you don't have to call it. You don't have to call it humor. You don't have to call it. I think if you think about it, think about this concept. Even if your spouse is not ready for humor, but if they come over to you and start a conversation, it's if you know this concept,
right?
You're already ahead of the game of being in the same page and continuing and working things out.
Right. And if somebody comes over to you and they're talking about something that in your head you go, this is boring, or this is unimportant, right? So then you're not yes-anding in the conversation, right? And there's so many levels to this. There was a time I did an improv class, and there was a woman there who it was her first class ever. She was so nervous. And the teacher asked her, why are you here? And she said, I'm a real estate agent and I want to get more comfortable when I'm showing houses. So I got put in a scene with her. And the first thing that I thought was, what does this nervous lady need from me? And that was the first time I ever had that kind of thought in improv. What does this nervous lady need from me? And then we started the scene and I said, I think the house is beautiful, but the kitchen's a little small. And I saw her like loosen up. She was like, well, actually, let me show you, the size of the master bedroom. And then once she was comfortable, then I said, everything is great. Does the ghost that is sitting in the kitchen need to stay there, or can we have that removed? So then we got really playful once we were there, but it started with, this is your space. I'm willing to go into your space. Not willing. Willing is the wrong word. I respect you enough to want to go into this space with you. Right. And so what entertains you or what's interesting to you, I'm going to really try to feel into that with you. And then I'm part of it too, right? Because it's not just be mavater and then disappear and have no sense of self anymore. It's, hey, that's wild that you're doing that, whatever it is that they're talking about. And then you might add something and they're really appreciative of what you added, not because it's brilliant, but because they appreciate that you appreciated them.
Thank you.
Amazing. So here's a question that somebody sent in. My friend has been very closed off about her personal life, and she's going through a divorce. I tried to have a conversation with her, but she shuts them down. I'm considering making light jokes about divorce to lighten the situation. Do you think this approach will make her feel more comfortable?
Interesting question. I kind of go back to the Shiva conversation that we were having earlier, like, or really the shock conversation when someone calls, you know, you have a conversation, they're shocked about bad news that they got. Like you are there for them. So what do they need from you? Meaning it's not what do they need you to say. I believe it's more who do they need you to be? And then whatever you end up saying is built off of who do they need you to be. So for example, in a situation like that, you may be trying to come up with the words of what to say to get this person to open up. That doesn't actually sound like it's about them that much, because getting them to open up actually like would be satisfying to you because you're like, good, I got them to open up. But what if they open up and it doesn't make them feel better? It doesn't help them at all. So if you think about it of like, what is their world like? Who am I in their world? And what does it mean to them when I'm with them, when I rejoin their world, right? And what you might come up with is, I'm here for whatever you need. If you need to walk silently for 5 hours, we'll do that. If I'm happy to make jokes, but it doesn't matter what I do. I want you to know that I'm here with you and you're not alone in this, right? And you really have to internalize that. It's not words that you're saying. It's internalizing, who am I to this person? And why does it matter that I'm here with them? And you keep that around, and then you can adjust if their mood adjusts.
I think everybody has this problem when they have a friend that loses somebody, or they have a friend that gets divorced, and they want to just like they don't start off the first like, oh, I heard the news, I want to really be there for you. They sort of start a roundabout, and then they always do the roundabout, and then the person doesn't want to talk about it either because they started the roundabout, they're not comfortable, and this is constant. Had this so many times with people, and then it's like all of a sudden I have a friend that like I want to be there for them, like she doesn't even know that I know, but I really know. So I'm trying to, and then there's like almost, and then the person who's going through it says, I can't believe she's such an idiot. She knows that I know, but she's not being supportive for me. And everybody's upset. And it's just like such a miscommunication. The question really is, how do you ice break it? And if the person is like not comfortable, mature enough, I guess, to say it straight out, or if the person is trying to like make like a kibbutz about it, like, oh, sorry, you got divorced. At least you have Wolf every other weekend. Like, I don't know, something, right? Like they're trying to break the ice. That's really the question. Like, how do you break an ice in a difficult situation? You don't want to hurt somebody, but you want to show that you care.
Right. So I think most of the time people who are going through something tough are more likely to be hurt by the people close to them not saying anything, by the people close to them saying the wrong thing. Meaning, because like imagine like your best friend never said anything to you about something horrible that you went through, right? Like if it's your best friend, you would probably be forgiving of them if they didn't say the right thing. They're not just like the guy who's saying the stupid thing in the situation, you know, like a guy walks over to your shul and you have no idea who the guy is. And the guy's like, oh, at least you get every weekend up, right? If you're really close with that person, I believe it would be way more hurtful to not say anything than to say the wrong thing. And if you do say the wrong thing, I can imagine, you know, the person who's going through something tough being much more forgiving than you would like anticipate, because they want you to be a part of their life and they want you to care for them. But I always go back to this, is that when we are involved with people in our lives that we have relationships that are valuable to us, all we need to do is genuinely in our heart show up for them, and then we will figure out, and this is improvising, we will figure out what is needed in the moment. Because if you force a certain statement, you know, you had a 2-hour session, you had a double session with your therapist, and you came up with a line, and then you go over to your friend and you take out a paper and you say, what you're going through must be so tough, and I am your friend and I want to be there for you, right? Like, it's not going to do anything. It's sometimes it's just, you look at your friend and you feel your whole entire relationship and you go, I'm here with you no matter what, whatever you need from me. And right. And that comes from the inside. And so, you know, if you know that making a joke is going to be a good move, do it. If you're not sure, then just start with showing them that you're there for them and that you're willing to adjust with whatever they need, because they might need to make a joke and then they might need to cry right after that. Right? I've had friends who are going through stuff who literally say, I want to go out with you and I just want to curse for the next 2 hours. I'm like, cool. And then 40 minutes in, they're like, I don't want to talk anymore. I'm like, cool. And then they're like, you know, but this is a stupid restaurant, right? And I'm like, yeah. Right. Like you follow their lead, but nothing changes internally in how you're relating to them and what they mean to you.
Okay, let's go to the next live question. You're on.
Yeah, hi. Hashem really has a funny sense of humor, because over the past weekend I was like so depressed. I'm listening to a certain therapist on to his lectures, and he keeps on saying about always doing what's right and responsible, and that's how you build your self-esteem. So all my life I'm doing what's right and responsible. I get up and I'm not going to do anything before I do my prayers, and then I'm going to take care of the kids first and the house first before I have fun. And I just got so fed up and resentful that I just exploded, and I don't want to do anything anymore because it's so not real. It's just I'm pushing myself to do what I have to do and doing what's right and responsible. But what you said about becoming a raisin or a sun-dried tomato, I felt like I'm just drying up because always doing what's right and responsible, and it's too much. I want to continue to do what's right and responsible, because letting go of responsibilities is not the right way either. But how do I continue doing what's right and responsible, but in a loose, playful way?
Okay, you get back to $1 million question, okay?
Yes. Oh, I love this.
I'm gonna say it again. Because this is resonating. It's raisin editing. So the bottom line is for the people, we start off, we're young, we're fun, we date and we play board games and we play Monopoly, and life is so good. But then we have children, and then we have financials, and then we have real life pressures, and people have tsaros. How do we re-tap in to becoming responsible, doing what you need to do, being a mensch, not like saying, okay, I'm done, but at the same time, tapping into that playfulness. I think like we almost forget how to do that.
Yes, we do forget how to do it. And one of the most beautiful gifts that we get in that area is actually our kids, because our kids know how to do it. They know how to do something that we once knew how to do, but we forgot how to do it. But we also know how valuable it is, but they live it, right? So you think about the progression of like, going on shidduch dates and playing categories in a Hyatt waiting room, what's it called, in a lobby, whatever, right? And then you get serious, and then you have kids, and it's like, wow, I'm an adult now, and I have a mortgage, and I have a child, and I'm responsible for these people. And then the kid goes, Daddy, could you play with me? And you're like, not now, right? And that's a missed opportunity in like 1,000 ways. And so one of the things that I found was I was always playful with my kids, but when I started doing improv, I started appreciating what my kids were doing, because they live an improvised imagination world. And if you just yes and them for like a minute and a half, then all of a sudden you're brought back into that whole world of living, and you can be doing the right thing. You can wake up in the morning and you can get your kids ready to go to school and all that kind of stuff. And it's stressful and it's crazy. And I'm not downplaying that at all. But you can also be in that mindset of, I want their energy to lead me into that space. And it's going to actually fuel me too, because they have a flame and we have a match. And if they light our match, they didn't lose anything from their flame, and then we can take that flame and go somewhere else with it. So sometimes I will go over to my kids and I'll just like kind of like get them to give me some of that magical energy.
Give me some youth.
Yeah, give me some youth. And so the way into that is the yes and mindset, and sometimes actually just kind of yes anding. I mean, this is an entire philosophy of play therapy with kids, where you just put them in a room full of toys, and the therapist follows the kid around and says, oh, interesting. Tell me about this one. Oh, this one's a rocket ship. Okay, but it's a ball, right? But you don't say, no, that's a ball. You say, oh, what do you do with the rocket ship? And you let the kid teach you about their form of play. This can and should be done as parents to our children, not only for them, but it actually feeds us, which then actually feeds back to them. And then we have this beautiful exchange of abilities, because we can be the structured, grounded adults, and they can be the loosey-goosey, wild imagination, full of energy energy people in our house. And sometimes I need to rein it in, but sometimes I need you to loosen me up. And we do it back and forth. And it's just gift giving all over the place. Beautiful.
That's the balance we're looking for.
Right. So, but that's why I always say you can start this with your kids before anything. Right. Because your kids want to play. Now somebody would say to me, what about discipline? What about getting out of control? If I'm hyper with my kids.
The next question. Somebody's sending the question. As a parent of a 15-year-old boy who's having a hard time connecting with him, do you think I should stop the disciplining focus so much and focus more on playing and joking around with him? Right.
Okay.
Their relationship is not good now. So
Right.
he's telling him, wake up, go to shul, whatever he's telling with him. And he's like, yeah, dad, yeah, whatever. So should he just say, okay, he's 15, he's not listening to me. Let me just like chill with him. Let me have a good time with him. And sort of like, does that make sense?
Well, I also, okay, so I don't think that this is necessarily a stira in terms of discipline. Because a lot of times people think that like, if I'm playful, then I'm just basically like an uncle and like, I need to be a parent. Right. But I learned something actually, when I was a teenager. I used to work with special needs kids in a camp every summer. That was the summer that I looked forward to. It was Purim and then the summer. What I was taught was when you have to,
you in yeshiva was
Yeah.
called Purim and then for the summer break.
Yep, and then back to Purim. Yeah, and I learned the shtickle diet in there too. Don't worry about it. But in the summer, so they taught us when you have to discipline a kid, right? So a kid's not listening to you. What is your internal experience like? Are you mad that they're not listening to you, or are you thinking that it's good for them to listen to the rules? It's a very big difference, because if you're mad that they're not listening to you, so then you actually come at it with more intensity, more anger, and it's not about them anymore. And you're trying to serve yourself, right? When you think about, oh, this is actually good for them, you can still tell them what they need to do, and you can still insist on it, but you soften. So your look might soften, your eyebrows might soften, your tone might soften. And we used to do this thing because back then we had a lot of kids with a lot of behavioral issues. And we used to do this thing where we would look at each other, like while we were being tough with the kids, we would look at each other and go like, just like in the middle of it, just loosen your whole face. The point was that I'm loosening my insides, because my insides should not be tight, right? So this is my version of it with my kids. I do stuff like, you better go brush your teeth right now. I'm going to count to cucumber. And by the time I get to cucumber, you better be brushing your teeth. And I start going, watermelon, cantaloupe, and I just start saying as many fruits and vegetables as I can think of, right? Another thing I'll do is I'm going to count to 307. And I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? So I'm not saying that works for everybody, but the reason why I do that is because I want to keep myself soft inside. I want to keep myself playful while I'm dealing with, this magical, beautiful, vulnerable piece of clay that's being molded, right? So it's not a contradiction. You go back to the 15-year-old. You want to wake him up for shachars? Wake him up for shachars, soften your inside, and be playful with him too, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like, now we're leaving him alone, right? Because that's a mistake a lot of people are making. They're afraid of their kids now. It doesn't mean we have to go back to the other extreme where it's like, no, the parents are the parents and they say something, that means you have to do it. Oh, there's a middle ground. I'm gonna wake you up for chakras. I'm not gonna be mean about it. And later in the day, I'm gonna ask you if you want to play ping pong with me. And I'm not gonna give you any tips about playing ping pong. And I'm not gonna talk about how good at ping pong I was when I was in yeshiva. We're literally just gonna play ping pong with each other. And then that's it. And it's gonna end. And we're gonna move on. Right? So I don't think it's as much of a steer as it feels like, but you kind of have to bring yourself back into that playful world in order to start incorporating it into the way that you live. If you don't have any access because you're too afraid of the playful world and the laughing world and all that, then you're going to think like, hey, it is a stira. Does this show go on for like 4 hours? Like, what do we do here?
Whoa. I didn't say yes and.
Here's another question before we finish.
Sound like a buff.
No. I got more coffee, so you let me,
Anyway. We're gonna improv. See how it plays out, all right?
This is someone who says he has OCD and get really bothered when makes mistakes. I would love to incorporate laughing it off, making light of it. Can you give me a few practical examples of how to do that?
Yeah, I love this question. Anxiety, when it's disordered anxiety, it is lying to us that certain things, if they don't go well, they're going to have a negative outcome, and it's going to be catastrophic most of the time. When you're working on obsessive compulsive type of thoughts or patterns, anxiety, so your anxiety actually doesn't want you to be playful. Your anxiety wants you to remain that uptight. And so as a part of, challenging your anxiety, you may start trying to laugh at the situation, but think about it like this. You're laughing at your anxiety because your anxiety is lying to you, right? So like, I'll give you an example. Somebody I worked with a long time ago, he had a intense fear of coming late to class, and that he'd walk into class and everybody would see him and they would judge him on his way in, right? To the point where many times he wouldn't actually go to class and he would hide in the college parking lot, and he would tell his parents, I went to class today, but then he would drive home afterwards, right? And so the lie of the anxiety is that if people look at you, then they're going to judge you, and there's going to be some negative consequence for you in your life. Like they're not going to want to be friends with you. They're going to think you're weird. They're going to hate you, right? Fine, all that kind of stuff. Once you start to believe that your anxiety is lying to you, because it actually cannot happen from somebody walking into a room that nobody wants to be friends with you. Like there's no WhatsApp group of all the people in that room, and they're like, you see how he just walked into the room? What a loser. Hey, let's all agree not to be friends with him. Like once you start to see that your anxiety is lying to you, so then think about what it does when you mock your anxiety. So don't think about making fun of your mistakes. Think about making fun of your anxiety, which is trying to tell you that it's a massive mistake, which is going to ruin your life. And then make fun of that, right? So then it's not actually making fun of yourself as much. It's actually making fun of this made up entity that, and in my anxiety group, we actually, we personify, we create a character. Like who is your anxiety? What does your anxiety look like? And then we talk to it. And when we talk to it, I encourage them to make jokes at it, because it gets so mad when it makes jokes, but you're like, what are you so mad about, dog? What? Calm down a little bit. All right. Take it easy, right? So I think it's a great question, because when we have anxiety, that's something that makes us not able to make jokes. But think about how much it could lessen the anxiety when we start to challenge it by making jokes at it.
Hey, Yehudah.
Yeah,
You ready for the next one?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, I'll mute.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Firstly, thank you. I'm loving the upbeat tone of this share. I think we can all use a lot of it in our lives. I'm kind of going back to the woman who asked about how to start reclaiming her playfulness. In my own words, I'm not sure how she put it. After so many years of wanting to do the right thing and do the responsible thing. And I'm kind of like talking from myself and also from the women that I see around me, that especially for women, this can be very, very difficult. Why? Because women go into marriage and kind of adulthood hits them very, very quickly, especially if we're having lots of young children very close together and working to support a learning husband. But even, this is the angle I come from, and this is what I see around me, but I'm sure it's similar for other women also. And I feel like in the process of the busyness and trying so hard to be the adult, what happens is that we kind of lose touch with our playfulness, and then reclaiming it with the kids, it's a little bit different than the dad who kind of like gets to go out, be himself, and then come back and be playful with the kids. I feel like we're around the kids. It's hard to reclaim our playfulness from within the childhood. Like I hear what you're saying, and I over time, I've had my own journey with this, and And you know, Baruch Hashem, I feel like you know, I can resonate with what you're talking about, and it's giving me a lot of chizuk, but I feel like it's worth another little visit over here for what you would recommend for a woman to do to get in touch with herself beyond or outside of or irregardless of, you know, her children and the family life, because there's something inside of us that we need to reclaim, that we kind of find it harder to reclaim when we're holding that adult role where all of it started. Am I being clear?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The thing, let's think about this. When, you know, when we wake up in the morning and we have a to-do list and we think about all the things that need to get done, what we tend to do is we tend to make a list of things that, you know, are priorities. If you're a fellow like me with ADD, you make a list of all the lists that you made so you can keep track of them, so you can put them in a spreadsheet so that you could, right? So, but we make a list of all the things that need to get done. Now, very rarely on that list are things that are in the category of classic creativity, like we were talking about in the beginning, you know, arts, music, dancing, things like that. Now, I contend that the reason why they're not on that list is because they're not, quote unquote, productive. And so, you know, it's not going to produce anything. So what is it? You know, I have a lot to do, and you know, it's not worth spending my time. I have a limited amount of time. Now, I think that, you know, the overall human being, the existence of a human being has so many parts to it. And like I was saying earlier, that need to create things should not be overlooked. Now, very many times people will say, and they will be correct to a certain degree, I don't have time for that kind of thing. Like, I wish I had time for a pottery class, but I don't have time for a pottery class. So there's a little bit of a challenge that I have there, right? Because, you know, and maybe this is more for men, I don't know, but, you know, for all the people who say they don't have time, I would like to see how much screen time they have and scrolling their phone and how useful and productive that is. Okay. Right. So there's a lot of people who say they don't have time, but really you're devoting a lot of your time to something which is not productive, but you can lie to yourself and say that it is productive. Like, I gotta keep up on the news. Like, I think you'll be fine if you don't know, you know, that Kamala Harris like stumbled over her words again, whatever, fine. So A, do you actually not have the time, right? But B, and this might be even harder, is that like sometimes we feel silly doing something which is unproductive. Like sometimes we feel like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a professional, I'm a this, I'm a that, right? And should I be sitting down and knitting? Should I be doing a crossword puzzle? And to me, I believe the answer is yes, but that doesn't assuage the discomfort that might come up for you, right? Because the discomfort is really about that concept of how do other people view this? Why are you spending all this time doing this thing? Should you really be doing that? And that could be old voices, that could be you know, people around us who may not understand it. I didn't tell any of my friends that I was doing improv for several months, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I didn't want to have to explain it to them. I knew that it was correct and I knew that it was great for me, but I also knew that they might not understand it. So there's a level of discomfort. Where are you going on Thursday night? And I was like, I got work. And I was like, you know, technically it is work because I'm but it was the reason why I wasn't explaining it to them was because I knew that it was correct, and I don't want to have to run it by other people, right? So if there's something that you really enjoy in your life that you've stopped doing, what can you do to re-engage with that creative activity, right? So something that adds to your life, and it can be small, and it might not be ideal, and might not be the full pottery class that you want, but you know, is that valid for you to re-engage in that with that part of yourself? And that's not playful through the kids. That might be reading a book about pottery for 10. I don't know why I'm talking about pottery. I don't know anything about pottery, but reading a pottery book for 10 minutes before you go to bed. And that's kind of like, ooh, yeah, this is something that I love. And I forgot that I love this, but it fills me up.
What you're saying is aligning, I feel like, with a lot of what's worked for me and a lot of what I would love to reinforce. One is the permission, like
Yes.
just constantly giving ourselves permission permission to re-engage with those parts, permission to let go for a little bit. I feel like for a woman, especially in little bits, permission in little bits works better than permission for something big, because the demands on our time are so, they are real.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
but even like permission to let myself be silly like once a day.
Right.
You know, or permission to just pick up that thing that I was just pushing aside, that article that I was leaving for a while, you know,
Right.
like just like I've heard someone call it permission slips. So like permission to, you know, re-engage with myself, permission to even spend time to think about what it is that turns me on, that makes me feel loose, that, you know, all of that. Like I feel like yeah, like that's, you know, that's the way it's resonated with me, and you're kind of touching on that, and that's been very powerful for me. And also, like you're saying, to rediscover, or sometimes discover for the very first time, all of those things that you were talking about, those
Right.
things that you love, those things that are aligned with, those things that open you up, those things that make you feel alive, like, and just permission to drop that adult for a little bit, just for a
Right.
little bit, even for a little bit, like nobody, like just convincing ourselves that nobody's going to get harmed and nobody's going to die, not either us, if we give ourselves permission to do this.
That's right.
So,
I learned how to play
thank you for-
harmonica. I learned how to play harmonica sitting in traffic on the Van Wyck. Now that's a lot of time, and I know you don't have that much time on your hands, but I brought a harmonica with me, and then when I would be sitting there in traffic, I would just practice. Right. And it was really fun. And now I know how to play harmonica a little bit. You know, you can find little time, and it's not going to be amazing, but it's aligning. And I think that's the key word there.
So it's give yourself permission, and not that it's a good thing. It's actually something that your kids will thank you.
Yes.
The people around you need it, and you need it. And a lot of people don't realize how important it is. And I'm talking tonight, we get an idea of, it's something that I would love to have, but I don't have time, and I'm not sure. This is a must.
Right. Yes, it is.
I want to go back to the other woman trying to make a point. Yeah, hi.
Hi. Okay, it's not really a question. I just want to add that in therapy, we've used the IFS modality a lot, and it's something that helped me tremendously, and it still helps me to this day. I use it all the time. So we've worked through all my inner parts, and there's the inner princess that just doesn't want to work hard, and then there's the inner child that just wants to have it easy. And I've learned how to neutralize those parts. Like, I just want to go dance now, but I go back into myself and I say, I see you, little princess there. I see you, little toddler. You want to have an easy time. You want to have a good life, but I'm going to do what's good for my neshama. And I just do that all the time. And then I've even learned how to deal with the sadness of those parts, that they're not getting their expression. So I think that's just the exact opposite of what you're saying. I've basically learned how to block out the playful parts, see them, acknowledge them, but still continue doing what is what's good for my neshama. And then when I do give into those parts, not long ago I went on a grand vacation for a week. I came home, I was so depressed because that part was having a grand time, and I didn't want to back down now and let the responsible parts take over. So I wonder if you have any comments on that.
Yes, absolutely. The you know, the idea of talking to your inner child is not to become the inner child and like abandon your adult self. It's actually to tap into the wisdom that kid has. Now, most of the time when people are going through the journey of therapy, they don't really see that child as having wisdom in the beginning, because that child went through a lot. And if that child went through a lot, usually it felt like that was a bad version of themselves, and that version needs to be walled off. Now, when we start removing that wall, what you find is compassion, right, for that child, not right away, but you start to develop compassion for that child. But the level after that, a lot of people don't really get to this level. The level after that, or don't know about this level, the level after that is integration, where you say, I'm still my adult self, and my younger self knows things that my adult self doesn't know. My younger self has abilities that my adult self doesn't have. And I would like to tap into that younger self and bring it into my adult life, right? So sometimes people will try to go very extreme with, you know, re-engaging in their inner child, and they will feel inconsistent with who they are because they are not a child. So if you act like a wild, out of control child, it's going to feel strange because you are no longer a child. Besides for the fact that your inner child probably didn't want to be out of control either, because kids like to have structure, because why would anybody want to be out of control? But it's not who you are, because you are an adult. Now, the wisdom that the kid has, think about this. When we have early childhood classrooms, 4 or 5 years old, something like that, we have centers and like play centers for the kids to go to. There's no one center where all the kids are just hovering around one area. It's actually, you send these kids into the room and they all start gravitating to different parts of the room, right? And you would think that if you're 4 or 5 years old, you know nothing about the world, you should not know where to go, but you instinctively go to a place of something that you find interesting, right? Your inner child actually knows more about your interests and what fills you up than your adult self does. But your adult self is good too, because you don't want to turn back into a child. So you look at that inner child and you say, what do you love? Because I bet you my adult self also still loves that. And I know for myself, I remember the feeling. I went to an Avram Fried concert when I was 4 years old. I told him this, sort of. I went to an Avram Fried concert when I was 4 years old in the Forest Hills Jewish Center. And I walked in and I felt the rumbling of the bass from the music as I was walking into the auditorium, rumbling in my chest. And I remember that feeling. And I remember thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever felt in my entire life. I still play music now, and I still love music now. My 4-year-old knew that, right? So if my 4-year-old knew that, my 4-year-old might have known a lot of things. If I can still be my adult self and I can ask my 4-year-old some questions about stuff that he knows for sure, then I'm in great shape because I get the best of both worlds.
It's amazing to connect to that. And what's important is that if you're going to constantly suppress, or you'll say, oh, I hear you, but now I have to, then you're going to, then you will need to chill. And
Right.
if you think about it, your own child, let's say you have a 5-year-old, you have a 7-year-old, you listen to them and they want something. You can't do it now. So you say, you know what, Shefala, we'll do it in an hour. If you don't come back to it and you push it off, it's not going to work. You actually have to come back to that and give it what it needs so that you can go back, eventually back to work or back to the adult. So that might be a reason why you feel the therapist telling you just keep on doing what you need to do, but you want to give up. Right. Because you have to give a little bit to that child. You can't just push it away.
Yeah. And you got to respect that child, right? If you tell your child, you know, we're going to do it in an hour from now, and then you're like, he probably forgot about it. Right. So then that's not respecting that child. Right. Exactly. And you got to respect your inner child too. Same way you got to respect an outer child.
And there's nothing wrong, and permission granted. We all need it. We all have it.
Right.
And I think this is the healing that we all need. It's going to take time, but eventually with some chuckling and some laughter and some excitement in our life, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's jump into another question or two if we have a little time.
Yeah. I'm good.
My parents were like sticks in the mud type of personality, to say the least. They never laughed in the house. Everything was serious, and nothing was ever a laughing matter. I want to know your take on this. I'm torn between saying having more laughter in my house. Like basically, their parents were very whatever, and now this person's married. They have their own life, and you know they were raised in a very no jokes. Everything was serious. Right? I'm torn between having more laughter in my home and keeping the tzura of a proper household. It seems sad to see people live their lives so boring and inflexible.
Yeah, and I would imagine on the other side of it, you don't want to live like, you don't want to be too loose. You want to keep the home there, right? So you might want to bring some of that laughter in that you'd never had growing up, but then you also are like, well, that's the way the home is supposed to be. I think for some people who had that type of home growing up, it can almost be scary to have laughter and playfulness in your house. Like it feels like you're opening the door to something which is just dangerous, right? And sometimes it's not always the case, but this is kind of where my head goes here, is that, you know, you think about what that person's parents' reaction would have been if they did it in their home growing up. Is that fear still prevalent? I mean, does that fear still exist within this adult person? Right? Because if it does, then they're not actually yet making the decision of how much playfulness and laughter is healthy for my home. They're actually still responding to, oh, this is what mom or dad would have looked like if I did that in that home, and it still scares me, right? So like if the feeling still has a charge, imagining what your parents' reaction would have been if you were playful in your home growing up and you feel like a sense of dread. So then that's what needs to be processed through first. And then you can decide, okay, so I'm not doing this based on someone else's fear. I'm doing this based on intentional thought as somebody who runs a household and what I think will be good for, you know, my marriage, my children, this day and age, this era that we're in, right? Their specific needs, as opposed to, you know, I never would have done that in my home growing up. And so like, we're just not doing it in my house, right? So that happens unconsciously, because unconsciously you're just afraid of that reaction from your parents, from a long, long time ago.
Okay, before we end, maybe another joke.
Oh,
Do you want to do any role play before we go to the closing segment?
let's go to the closing segment. Let's go to the I will do improv straight through the night. Over Zoom, it is a little bit tough, but I do appreciate you guys being brave, even though your numbers were off, you know, over the 10 there. But
We're so cool.
How many groups do you know that do improv other than yours?
So therapy groups, very few.
Why isn't it more common, the therapeutic part in therapy?
I think two reasons. One is that it's not directly therapeutic as, you know, as clearly as other modalities are, right? Like I will tell you the theory behind why I think it's helpful, but you know, you don't see it as clearly as you might with a different modality. I think that's one. The other thing is that it takes a lot of vulnerability on the part of the therapist, meaning that I'm being playful. I have fumbled and bumbled in those sessions in front of my clients when it would have been like kind of safer if I would have just stayed in the professional, you know, protection of, you know, the research says blah, blah, blah. Instead of me saying the research says, I'm like, let's try this out. Let's see what happens. And then I said something dumb, right? And then I had a scene that didn't go anywhere. So there's a lot of vulnerability in it. This is the same reason why like psychodrama and role play is not used as much in therapy, because it's, you know, you have to kind of go off like on the fly. You have to be really like, you have to improvise. You know, psychodrama and role play are in the same category as improv. That's a more clear modality. And I actually did that before I did improv in therapy. So I did have some sort of a basis for what I was doing. And then I read up on it to make the connection so that I knew what I was doing actually made sense. And as opposed to being like, hey guys, I had an improv class last week and it was awesome. So everybody does improv now. But it takes a lot of adjusting on the fly, a lot of creativity, a lot of vulnerability.
Also, you have to realize, I mean, you have to realize also that if a therapist is not like a funny type of guy, he might not really have a lot of that skill.
Well, right. It might not be necessarily, you don't need to be funny to be a good improviser, but it could be that this is just not the personality of the therapist, which I believe that once a therapist really works at their craft, they should be using their personality to guide them into what their form of therapy is. But I say works at their craft because you can't be that therapist that's just like, hey, this is the answer. And the reason why I know it's the answer is because it makes me happy, right? Like you got to work at your craft. And that's why whenever I ask my clients about joining me on some experimental kind of thing, meaning improv or tennis or something out of the office, I ask them. And I emphasize sometimes to the point where they're like, I agree. I said, I'm going to do it. You would like stop asking me if I'm okay with it. But I ask them because like my way is not the only way. There's a trillion ways to help somebody. And I'm suggesting mine, but you might not connect to it. And a different therapist, you know, can use their personality to guide them into a different space that can connect them to a different type of client who needs a different type of intervention.
Okay, let's get into the closing segment. First of all, good Yehudah Alcabes for coming on tonight and giving us tremendous chizik, a little geschmack, a little laughter. It's been a long week. Trust us, it's been a long week for us. And good down-to-earth advice. Menachem, hopefully we'll have you on again. We'll get into a deeper part of it. We're going to the belly laughter. We're going to the deep kishkas.
Yeah.
And Mike shares 192. And if anyone wants to join the WhatsApp statuses, you can WhatsApp me at 732-314-1710. I'll send you the link. You can also go to menachembernfeld.com, sign up over there. Again, if anybody's here the first time, every Sunday night at 9:30 on the Zoom ID, we have different bottom, different therapists, many different topics. Yehudah's topic was a little bit, I have to tell you, was a little bit more funny and a little different, but we really appreciate it. It was geschmack, you know.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There was a lot of you hit a lot of important points, like really for real, a lot of important points.
Thanks.
And again, Menachem, next week, July 7th, we're gonna have hopefully Menachem, Rabbi Hershey Kleiman, the author from Praying with Fire, who was on I think quite a few years ago. But this time we're coming on talking about the topic of hashgacha pratis, right? Things that happen through godly climbing in essence, and when it happens, it's the coolest thing ever. And everybody has that hashgacha pratis story, but it usually lasts for about 10 minutes and then we forget about it. So hopefully we can get some insight in it, some understanding, how to be inspired from it and take it to the next level. So please join us. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to coachmenachem@gmail.com. Everything is recorded, and tonight's share is 192. You can call the phone lines, Menachem, tomorrow. This will be up 732-305-9011, 732-305-9011. And if anybody would like to be in contact with Yehudah Alcabes in Boca Raton, Yehudah, what's your address? So I can just send them straight to your house.
What? Straight to my house. Yeah.
Straight to, how do they get in touch with you? Like, if somebody wants
Yeah.
to book. Person number one is, can you do this type of therapy on Zoom?
Yes, I have done it on Zoom, and I can do it on Zoom. It takes a little bit more time to get comfortable because of that physical limitation. You're stuck to the camera, but yes, it can be done on Zoom. And
Or
it
you could just
works.
take a trip to Florida. That's
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and I
So
do
how
come to
somebody-
New York sometimes, and run around.
How does
do
somebody
some
get in touch with
workshops.
you, Yehudah?
Yes, the best way to get in touch with me is either my WhatsApp number 646-404-2878.
Say that again.
Or-
Sorry, 646.
646-404-2878.
Okay, or
Or if you are a person on Instagram at the_improv therapist
okay,
and the improvtherapist.com.
improv therapist, right? You have no
Oh, and I
competition.
want to mention this because I just put up a music on 24/6, which I'd like to put a plug in for that. It's music that I've worked on for many years and I actually had saved on my computer and I wasn't sharing with anybody. And I just put it out as an album this past week. So you can look up my name, Yehudah Alcabes. Yeah, I hope you like it.
When I first heard your name, I was Googling you, and then I see this weird guy singing. I was like, who is this guy? He looks so similar to you. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's him. He's the singing improv therapist comedian.
Yeah, that was my original name, but it wasn't.
Anything else that you do that we don't know?
No, that's it. I told you every single thing that I do.
How about a podcast?
Oh, you also have a podcast. You started a podcast.
Yes, my podcast, the Improv Therapist Podcast. That's available on the regular streaming apps, Spotify, Apple, things like that. And then also on YouTube, the Improv Therapist on YouTube.
Somebody's asking again for your number. What's the number again? 646?
646-404-2878.
2878?
Yep. I kept my New York number. That's the only thing from New York that I still have.
Again, so thank you to all the advertising, the Liquid Scoop, Eleanor of 5 Town Central, Chayla Cal from JCN. I'm going to give a closing. Menachem's going to give a closing. Then Yehudah, after over 2 hours on this program talking about laughter, we're expecting you to give such a deep wrap up of tonight's session. It'll be amazing. So I want to say, personally, I'm going to leave my closing, my thoughts, is I personally happen to use laughing therapy naturally since probably I can remember. I don't use it as a therapeutic, modality, but I do feel that when we could make like a lot of things, again, there's different levels, and sometimes it's inappropriate, and sometimes it's childish, and sometimes maybe you're trying to like not deal with the situation, blah, 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 blah. I get all that. But ultimately, when we could tap into it, it's a tremendous bracha. Being able to laugh about situations, and then you go to these family dynamics, and I'm sure everybody's eaten somebody by Shabbos family, where you have the father and the children are laughing and they're making jokes, not derogatory, not in I'm talking about just like having a good time and that deep relaxation, comfort. Like if we could reach that place, again, it doesn't cure all our problems, but it definitely gets us to be very healthy and balanced. And I do feel sad. I mean, it did came up tonight, and I did mention a few times, and the ladies were all saying that, like, unfortunately, because of the way life works, we grow out of that childness of us, and we have to become mature adults. We have to pay our bills and our mortgages, and pay our therapy bills with Yehudah. But we like lose that sense of that funness of ourselves. And it actually cripples us as a person because I don't know, you see these older people and they have like no, like that question, my parents, they never laughed. And is that like really like, is that they never tapped into it, or is there just been so much pain that they can't even access that? It's the same thing. It's the emotional part that you're shutting down. Emotions is crying and being sensitive, and it's also enjoying and being laughing. But if you can't do anything, you can't cry and be vulnerable, and you can't laugh. So you're just shutting down your whole emotions. So you're basically a robot. It happens to have a heart, but you're basically a robot. So again, I don't know, I don't know what the magic answer is. The people that shut it down, they have to tap into, feeling that inner child of theirs and really bring it out. And again, it's something you could explore with your therapist. It's something you could explore with your friends. It's something you could try to do. And it's very freeing and very healing. And I really think, honestly, this is just a thought. You have to tell me if you think it's true.
Yeah.
I really feel like the inner child is like that brilliant thing that we whatever. But I think really I think that the inner child is actually the main us, and the adult is actually like trying to like play a role. But I think the inner child, how we're brought up, and that thing that naturally came to us from Hashem until we like shut it down, that's like really who we are. And the rest is just like playing the role of I have to be a father, or I have to be a grandfather, I'm a Zaidi, I'm 90, like they play this role like, they can't enjoy. Like some people think they're a cantor, they're a chazan, and they can't sing. So anyway, the point is, that's my point. And it was a great time tonight. And I hope everybody learned a lot. A lot of people really texted me, they really enjoyed it. And a lot of interesting stuff. I hope people are able to take parts of this share tonight and incorporate into their lives and discuss it with your therapist, discuss it with your friends, like try to build something from it. Try to grow from that. Coach Menachem.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Yehudah. It was really amazing. And like we heard, hopefully we're able to pick up the pieces, understand a little bit, and we can take it to the next level. But I think it really came off last week's program. We discussed that every person has the adult self, the child self, and we all have it. It's not like, but there are people who are not in touch with their child self. And there's a reason for that, Don't go crack it open. There's a reason why you shut down, or whatever happened. And yes, it's a time to explore. But like we heard, number one, that's give yourself permission and start small. Something small that you would like to do, maybe once a week. It doesn't have to be with a different person. Something that you enjoy, that slowly you get in touch with yourself, with what I like, with what I want, something different. And you give yourself permission. And it's hard, like you're saying, wake up in the morning, put on the music and dance. It feels like stupid. You're like, who? But that's something that it's in your mind. See what's holding you back. And slowly, eventually, you can let go and open up. And the other piece, like we mentioned before, is that we all need it. The people around us need it. Your kids need it. Spouse, meaning we can't change others. But when you learn it, you do it for yourself. You give yourself permission. Slowly, things become a little bit lighter, a little bit easier. And that's what everybody needs for a relationship. If it's just rigid and doing what I need to do every day in and out, like what she said, it's a robot. And it's not a relationship, but we all need that to be able to slow down and to give yourself permission. And just the last thing, people think improv means humor, jokes. It doesn't have to be that. You don't have to have the personality as, somebody funny. It's the idea that we discussed. Right. When you have a conversation, don't shut it down. Don't push back. Don't push away. Go there. Be there with the other person. Be in their world. Be in the world together. And talk. Just the concept. It doesn't have to be funny. And that makes me chuckle. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Yehudah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get closing thoughts. Where we're putting this? Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody with takeaway what they can do to help themselves.
Yes. This was such a good it's a great conversation. I think about from our conversation the idea that came up about giving yourself permission, putting it framing it in that way, giving yourself permission. As I was preparing for this, I wrote down a list of things that we play as adults, but we don't consider it childish, right? So we play sports, we play music, right? We might play games on our phones, right? And then there are other times where we get playful, but only with permission from the people around us, right? So drinking alcohol as an example. If you're silly without alcohol, so it's not as acceptable as when you're sitting there and you're like, oh, we're all drinking. Okay, so now we have permission, right? You might feel like oh, it's Purim. Okay, we have permission to be playful. Great, that's great. Is that the only time that you're allowed to be playful? And I challenge that. And not to say everybody needs to be playful all of the time, but I challenge that. I challenge you to bring back the permission internally and decide, how much do I want to be playful in my life? How much do I need to be playful in my life? If your child comes over to you and asks you to play ball with them, that is a moment where if you push that away because you haven't opened the door to your playfulness, that's a tragedy, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a comic strip, Baby Blues. Baby Blues was just a family, right? And they had a few little kids, and there's a strip where the dad is watching TV, and the little girl who's her name is Zoe, and she has a mouth, right? She comes over to the dad and says, "Could you play ball with me?" She's holding a huge ball. And he says, "Not right now. Daddy's watching the news." And then you see her thinking for a second, and then she looks up and she says, "Daddy, are there a lot of things that are more important than playing ball?" And then the next frame is them outside kicking the ball back and forth. We need to open that back up for ourselves, for others, but we need to give ourselves permission to decide that, not wait for something around us to change, which then allows us to have permission to go ahead with being playful or laughing or being creative or doing something that's quote unquote unproductive. And I think, Menachem, you're right on track. Like, start small. You don't need to sign up for some classes and rearrange your schedule. Start small. It can literally be as small as making a face in the mirror. See how uncomfortable that makes you feel. And then ask yourself, did anything bad happen? Try something like that and see what happens. And then go from there. And I think it's a good discussion to have internally. I think it's a good discussion to have with your therapist. It's a good discussion to have with your spouse. And, we can open this up and still get to decide how much of it we allow into our lives, as opposed to letting somebody else dictate it for us, or an imaginary version of somebody else dictating it for us. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, everybody have a wonderful night. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Everybody just have an enjoyable, fun week. Just have a good time.
Thank you.
Good night.